happened to me the other day. Mostly weird because I was scrolling Instagram, which is something that I almost never do these days. And while I was doing that, I bumped into a post by an older tattooist lamenting the good old days of the 80s and the 90s, and that tattooing in the modern era has lost all of its cool factor and its weirdness and its interesting ideas and projects, and it's just been reduced to a load of sort of vanilla Pinterest tattoos, and that it's the fault of all these young kids coming in with their dildo pens and all that sort of stuff. You can imagine the kind of post, right? So I take a look in the comments, and of course it's, older tattooists going, yeah, that's absolutely right. These kids are fucking ruining everything. And of course the younger tattooists are going, shut up, boomer. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what the modern era of tattooing is all about. Even though I'm in the older tattooist category, quite honestly, I agree with both sides of that particular argument. The one thing that I really don't agree with is this idea of old school tattooists, young kid tattooists, new tattooists, describing ourselves in this way. I just think it draws or builds walls between us, and is one of the big reasons that our industry is open to be preyed on by the unscrupulous. But I guess beyond that, I started asking myself, I wonder why I agree with both sides. And I think it's because, I've got two kids that tattoo in their 20s and 30s, and two of the other guys in my shop are also in their early 30s. And so I look from my position of the artist who's been in the industry for a couple of decades, and I'm watching the stuff that these guys are doing and the various challenges that they've got. And I see how difficult it is. I do recognise that it was, even in a couple of decades, it was probably much easier for me to get a start in tattooing than it has been for them. And I also know, because we talk about it all the time, that certainly my guys in the shop, they don't like having to do the social media side of things. They don't mind posting pictures, but none of them are really interested in being influencers or, being any kind of social media superstar at all. They just want to do tattoos. But they also recognise that where tattooing is right now, or any creative industry, you pretty much have to play that game, and you have to find a way to resolve all of the things that you don't want to do the thing that you really do want to do, and that's the tattooing. So imagine what it's like to be a young tattooist having to put out this kind of content, in order for people to just know that you exist, and then by your peers be told that you're, somehow a loser and you're ruining the industry and blah, blah. You can fill in the blanks for yourself. And I think that's a terrible place to be. And I think some of those of us that are older should be shown a bit more responsibility and a bit more care for people that are coming in with a deep passion for the industry, but are faced with an audience that are post the TV era of tattooing, I mean, you can throw blame around all day long, I guess, but the truth of the matter is the doors to tattooing that were probably only slightly ajar when I slipped in about 20 years ago are now thrown wide open to anybody who wants to enter tattooing. The barriers have all been pulled down, and there are thousands, millions of tattooists out there, and a vast majority of them are really good. The quality of tattooing being done by people who've been, just in the industry for a few years is phenomenal to me. And I think that's amazing for the art form. But we can't blame younger tattooists or new tattooists for the industry that they're walking into or inheriting. I think we have to try and appreciate that they've got a completely different set of problems than what I had, or somebody who started in the 80s or the 90s. It's a completely different playing field, I guess. And as I was scrolling and thinking about these various challenges that younger people have got, now don't get me wrong, I think it's a fair argument to say that if you let the mainstream into the world of tattooing, it will inherently change the nature of what tattoo imagery becomes. If not everybody has come from an alternative lifestyle and it's your bank manager or somebody that works in retail, maybe they've got a completely different idea of what a tattoo is and what it looks like, right? And that's fair enough, but it will, to the people that are in that kind of really out there area of tattooing, it will look like it's becoming bland and vanilla. But I don't think that's the fault of the tattooists who were walking in. I mean, those decisions weren't made by those people. They were made by the generation of people that came before them, sometimes 2 generations of artists that came before them. They're just dealing with what they're dealing with in the best way they can. And then that reminded me of a piece that I wrote for Total Tattoo magazine about, I guess, a year ago now, about the importance of making art and not content. Because I think that for younger tattooists or modern day tattooists, we're being driven to constantly make content and present it as art. You know, for all of us, we all have to think about the balance that we strike between the content side of things and the actual artistry itself. And so what I'm about to play you is a piece that I recorded, I filmed it, and then in the changes to the channel, it got lost, and, you know, so I'm representing it to you. But I think it's still valid in a world that demands that you make content if you're a creative. How do you keep the art at the forefront? And so I hope that this piece that I wrote will give you some food for thought, and maybe we can all zoom out and get some perspective and stop slinging names at each other and start finding a common ground and working out from there. Because the thing that we have in common is that we all love the art form. And I think that's got to remain always the most important thing. Anyway.
The things I say in the book is the audience comes last. And the audience comes last, not because I don't care about them or I don't like the audience. In service to the audience, they have to come last. Yeah. The thing that the audience wants is the best thing they can get. If we're trying to make it for them, it won't be the best thing it can get. It'll water it down. The process of making something for someone else undermines it.
Yes, never play to the gallery. I think, but you never learn that until much later on, I think. But never work for other people at what you do. Always remember that the reason that you initially started working was that there was something inside yourself that you felt that if you could manifest it in some way, you would understand more about yourself and how you coexist with the rest of society.
In 2025, you could argue that tattooing has never looked this good. Just open Instagram, and 30 seconds in, you're hit with an endless parade of hyper-smooth blends and laser-sharp lines. Every photo perfectly lit, perfectly framed, and perfectly performing. At first glance, it looks like evolution, like tattooing has leveled up into some kind of high-definition utopia. But look closer, and you'll see something else. Everything's starting to look the same. Different artists, same output. Different studios, same aesthetic. The feed becomes a loop, an endless deja vu. And that's not growth. That's stagnation wearing a filter. An algorithmic treadmill that convinces us we're moving when we're actually standing still. Technology has made skill visible, measurable. Now, likes tell you if your tattoo is good, but the algorithm doesn't reward originality. It rewards the familiar, the repeatable, the safe. So we chase trends. We feed the machine. Black and grey realism, fine line florals, tiny tattoos, all technically flawless, but uniform, predictable, riskless. We've mistaken polish for progress and built a culture that's technically perfect, but artistically it's flatlined. And I've seen it happen over and over. New artists judged by their feed rather than their sketchbook. Clients see polished portfolios and think talent, but is it art or just something that photographed well in a square? Tattooing isn't about algorithmic validation, it's about connection. You can't automate curiosity or intuition. And if you're waiting for the algorithm to guide your art, then you're already behind.
I'd love to feel that what I did actually changed the fabric of music. And I think I've been very fortunate that I've actually seen it happen within my lifetime. I mean, I've seen music, modern music, change so dramatically over the last 25 years. And I've got a fairly shrewd idea of how much, say, myself and Brian Eno had to do with changing aspects of it, you know. And I'm sure many people from my generation, because it's such a fast event horizon in popular music, many of us have been able to see the changes that we've made, from the Stones to name anybody you would want to really. And so that's pretty satisfying, because we've seen it happen.
Most tattooists aren't concentrating on making art anymore. They're making content. Tattoos designed not for the human wearing them, but for the feed watching them. In 2025, we judge tattoos by how they perform online. But do they say anything? Do they carry weight? Do they push the language of tattooing forward? The metric now is, will it stop a thumb mid-scroll? A content tattoo is bright, clear, trendy. It's bait, not expression. But art doesn't work like that. Art's messy, risky, and human. Art asks, does this feel true? But content asks, will this go viral?
If I found myself in some kind of cul-de-sac in the music, I'd break down the problem by actually painting it. I'd try and visualize what the problem was, the sense of these textures were grating against each other in a way that wasn't admirable. And I'd try and visualize those textures and paint them and then find out what was wrong. And then when I'd solve that problem, I'd take it back into the studio. I've never really compartmentalized things. Everything for me is just this flux of doing stuff. Some of it's music and some of it's visual. And the two have always been very entwined.
Creation needs surrender. Analysis needs control. Mix the two and you've got compromise. Work that's flawless to the eye, but hollow in spirit. Tattoos not made to live, but to perform. Creation is supposed to feel wild, irrational, uncomfortable. Editing is where you refine it. But when you over-edit, when you polish out all the soul, you don't get great art, you get vanilla. That's why so much tattooing today feels empty, because the outer world, the world of content, has colonized the inner world, the world of art. Algorithms are objective, but art is subjective. One rewards patterns, the other breaks them. Algorithms can't recognize nuance, subtlety, or soul. They only understand more of this. Art thrives on surprise, on rule breaking, on risk. When you create for the algorithm, you're trying to measure your soul with a ruler. And no wonder everything feels the same. And it's that sameness that's exhausting. Scroll long enough and you'll feel it. The déjà vu. Tattooing online doesn't feel like discovery anymore. It feels like catalogue shopping. Artists are burning out, chained to content calendars, measuring their worth by views instead of meaning. And that's not art, that's unpaid marketing for a platform that doesn't care about you or your art. And nothing kills originality faster than a trend. One tattoo goes viral, a butterfly, a geometric wolf, and within weeks you see hundreds of clones. The first ones might have been inspired. The rest? Well, that's just carbon paper with better lighting. True breakthroughs happen in the margins, in the weird experiments that don't trend. When tattoos become content, they stop being symbols and start being tokens. They stop being about the person wearing them and start being about engagement. Tattoos are meant to live on the skin, to last beyond the feed. Reducing them to content strips them of everything that makes them so powerful.
It's going to affect me, whether I like it or not. I'm going to be pained by the people that don't like it, and I'm going to be bolstered by people who do like it. What it won't do is change the way that I work, which is probably the most important thing. But whatever I hear, and people will insist on sending me any criticism, I'll get over it fairly quickly. I'm not thick-skinned, but I'm not thin-skinned either. But I've gotten used to the fact that you just can't please all the people all the time. And I've got no great desire to be loved in a major way by faceless, anonymous crowds. It doesn't really, it's not part of something that I want.
So where do we go from here? Well, we go inward. We make art with grit, with risk, with soul. We make tattoos that don't photograph well, but live beautifully. Tattoos that confuse algorithms, but resonate with humans. We stop asking, will this go viral? And start asking, does this feel true? as Rick Rubin said, the audience comes last. And that's where we begin again. Tattooing doesn't need more content. It needs more art, more messy beginnings, more experiments that might fail, but move the craft forward. Because the tattoos that last, the ones that shaped the culture, aren't the ones that trended. They're the ones that carried a piece of your soul. So if you love this art form, then bleed for it, because our clients do.
The other thing I would say is that if you feel safe in the area that you're working in, you're not working in the right area. Always go a little further into the water than you feel you're capable of being in. Go a little bit out of your depth, and when you don't feel that your feet are quite touching the bottom, you're just about in the right place to do something exciting.